Welcome. Today we are diving into a really fascinating psychological shift that affects every single one of us, and that is our social circles. We live in this world that constantly tells us more is better. More followers, more connections, more people showing up to our weekend plans. But in today's explainer, we're going to unpack the exact opposite approach. We are looking into the hidden psychology of quality over quantity in friendships, and exactly why some of the most fulfilled people you'll ever meet intentionally choose to keep their circles small. We've all felt the pressure, right? If you don't have a massive, bustling group of friends, society kind of whispers that you must be doing something wrong, that you're missing out, or worse, that you're just antisocial. But what if having fewer friends isn't a social failure? What if we completely reframe how we view small social circles? What if a tight-knit group isn't a sign of some social deficit, but is actually a masterclass in psychological well-being? Society loves to push this myth that having a small circle means you are shy or maybe even unfriendly. We've all heard that stereotype. But the psychological reality is entirely different. Keeping a small circle is a highly conscious, deeply intentional psychological choice. People with small circles often know hundreds of people, but they just choose to keep only a handful close. They rarely expand that inner circle. They absolutely do not attend every single gathering, and they're doing this completely on purpose. So let's look at number 1. Not shy, just selective. It's time we start reevaluating our social expectations. People with this specific psychological profile are perfectly comfortable looking someone in the eye and saying, you know what? I already have enough people in my life. And here's the thing. They don't say it with malice. They say it with total peace. Psychologically, they are deeply comfortable just being alone. Think about how many people stay in exhausting, toxic friendships simply because they're terrified of loneliness. But highly selective people, they do not confuse being alone with being lonely. They are the ones who feel zero guilt about staying in on a Friday night with a good book, instead of forcing themselves to go to a crowded, noisy party. They feel absolutely zero pressure to maintain relationships that just don't add value to their lives anymore. Moving to number 2, trust must be earned slowly. It's all about consistency over first impressions. For these individuals, trust is definitely not automatic. A one-week friendship? Well, that's just a first impression. They don't believe knowing someone for a few weeks is even close to enough to build a real relationship. At 1 month, they are merely observing behavior, taking it all in. It takes a solid 6 months to slowly build mutual trust, and often a full year or more of rock-solid consistency before someone actually earns access to their inner life. They would much rather spend months learning who someone truly is than quickly let a stranger into their personal world just based on a really charming introduction. Which brings us to number 3, depth over frequency. This is the core focus of connection. It really all comes down to this idea: one genuine connection is worth more than many surface-level ones. Some people simply do not need to talk to you every single day to feel connected. What matters to them isn't the frequency of the interaction, it is the absolute depth and quality of the relationship. Psychology strongly suggests that emotional safety and having meaningful conversations create a much deeper, much more resilient sense of satisfaction than having a huge number of casual, surface-level friendships. When you start prioritizing depth over frequency, you stop spreading yourself so thin. You start building relationships that can actually hold your weight when life inevitably gets heavy. That leads right into number 4, guarding your emotional peace and understanding the absolute limits of emotional energy. I want you to think about this as emotional economics. Every single relationship you have requires finite emotional energy. It's a budget. More people in your life inevitably means more expectations, more potential for misunderstandings, and yeah, definitely more drama. People who keep their circles small actively recognize this limit. That's exactly why highly selective people cap their energy spent on small talk and drama at around 15%, just a tiny fraction. They do this so they can passionately allocate a massive 85% of their energy toward what actually matters: meaningful conversations, authentic connections, and vital self-care. Keeping a smaller circle is quite literally a psychological strategy to avoid unnecessary stress and guard your peace. And finally, number 5, actions over empty words. This is the ultimate litmus test for friendship. Promises simply do not impress these individuals at all. Consistency does. They actively measure a connection by a very simple 3-part litmus test. Number 1, who actually shows up when it matters? Number 2, who consistently keeps their word? And crucially, number 3, who stays when times get genuinely difficult? Psychology shows us time and time again that real trust grows through repeated, reliable behavior. It doesn't grow through charming conversations or grand, empty promises. And that is exactly why their circle grows so slowly. But when it does grow, it becomes virtually unbreakable. Keeping your circle small doesn't mean you dislike people. It just means you're protecting your energy. The old way of measuring relationships was basically a pure head count, right? Just how many people you know. But the psychologically healthy approach is entirely different. It's about measuring your relationships by how safe, how supported, and how deeply understood you feel around the very few people who truly matter. So I'll leave you with this to ask yourself today. Are you measuring your friendships by head count or by safety? Take a moment this week to really look at your own circle. Once you understand the hidden psychology behind these choices, stepping back from a massive crowd to cultivate just one or two genuine connections reveals a beautiful truth about human behavior. I challenge you to prioritize depth and safety in your own relationships this week. Thanks so much for exploring this with me today.